Hi, this is Kimberly. This is a synopsis and a critique of Chapter 23 of the book Letters from Christopher, Tragic Confessions of the Watts Family Murders by Cheryln Cadle. This chapter is titled Reflections from Christopher. God, y'all, I have never had so many people praise me in my entire life. After that last video, it was so sweet. I've always been a bit of a wallflower, so I'm not used to this. I hope I don't get all conceited and shit. Y'all let me know if I do and just put me back on the right track. I will continue cussing, swearing, saying bad words, you name it. Like I was gonna fucking stop anyway. And what's this bit I've heard about they are taking back some of the discovery? Is that true? Where did this come from? And we aren't done with it yet. I hope this means that something dramatic is going to happen. I don't know if anyone else was involved in dumbass's cockamamie plan, but if they were, they need to be held accountable. I feel like this case is not done. There just seems to be something unfinished about it. I'm sure several of you agree with me. So, getting on with the critique. I want to take y'all on this roller coaster ride with me. I'm mad at myself by getting taken in by this scribble. See what happens when I get sick? My spidey senses go all off kilter, and I allow myself to be led down the garden path, as my late mom would say. She also used to say when she was feeling under the weather, or if she had a hangover or something, that she felt like she had been pulled through the hedges backwards. That's where I am at right now. I've got this crazy upper respiratory mess going on with a headache that feels like my head is in a vice. But back to where I got snowed by Mrs. Scribble. That's Scribe and Cadle put together. It's my new word for her. This is how my summary was originally. I'll let you know when I came back to my senses. I began, finally, we get to the part of the book where she's been promising us. I'm tired of going over discovery again, although I guess it was good to brush up on it. Cadle quotes Chris here throughout the entire chapter. I wish she had been more descriptive of if it was phone, in person, a letter, Morse code, carrier pigeon. She calls them, quote, informal conversations. Is one able to have a formal conversation with an inmate? And if so, is it black tie formal wear required? And won't you get messy in that vending machine room? Chris says pretty much his life stopped at age 34. He, quote, lost his family, friends, job, house, everything that mattered. No, asshole, you didn't lose it. You demolished it. You have ripped out heart after heart after heart and stomped on them. Hey, I know, why don't you write to Dave Baumhover's wife and ask her how you have disrupted her and her husband's lives forever? What about all those people that had to go to Survey 319 and witness and deal with that indescribable nightmare and had to clean up after you? You disgust me. You don't even think past yourself and how you were feeling. Why does Chris always act like he's a scaredy cat bystander? I was surprised to hear Chris say that he and Shannon weren't meant for one another in this chapter. I suppose he's still mooning over Nikki. He claims he does not want to come across as though he's blaming Shannon. He says he was overwhelmed by her beauty when they met, and that he was not true to himself because of it. He could not relax and be himself. Well, what is yourself, Christopher? Tell us. I wish Mrs. Scribble would have asked him, who is Chris Watts? If you wanted to break out of that shell, you're supposed to start small. Like you should have hung that picture on the wall while they were in North Carolina. You could have gotten one of those huge pictures with the black velvet painting with the plywood frame. If I say Elvis paintings, I'm sure you can picture it in your mind. Only instead of Elvis, you could have picked out a gaudy NASCAR representation. I guarantee you would have felt like a bad, bad boy. But yes, you start small finding yourself. Your 6 weeks alone would have been a great way to spend your time. Finding yourself, not having a dirty, sweaty, torrid love affair, then secretly poisoning your wife, finally killing your entire family. That's not how you find yourself. Were you being yourself with Nikki? I just have no words for you. Chris again further into the chapter laments about losing his family, as though it was a tragic accident instead of a monster preying on its victims. Then he says, quote, it's the most horrible thing I could ever do, and I'm still saying it was not my mind or my hands that did this to them, but the hands and mind being controlled by something evil. I hope people will believe me, end quote. God almighty. Okay, so whatever happened to being controlled by Shannon? So you never ever had a mind of your own? You've never been in control of your ugly self? So let me get this straight. Life was beautiful, you say. You say in this chapter that your wedding day was the happiest day of your life. Shannon was gorgeous beyond belief in your eyes. Life was good. Everything revolved around the children. And then you lost, in your words, your family because you were being dominated by something sinister. Chris talks about his and Shannon's first date going to a theater. Mr. Genius thought they were going to a movie theater and showed up looking like a slob, and Shannon was dressed to the nines. He was afraid he wasn't going to get another date. Oh, how I wish Shannon would have run for the hills, like her damn pants were on fire. This idiot has no communication skills, does he? And he's dumber than a rock to think he could, quote, be himself with Nikki. No, she controlled your ass too. And she told you you were being yourself and all open and shit because she set her sights on you and she was going to have you. And then what? Would you end up killing her too eventually for being bossy? When one is as much of a wimp and a dumb fuck, I'm sure everyone seems intimidating. Chris is used to being told what to do and then doing it, never deviating. I want to know what his childhood was like, really like. I hope one day we can find out if he was born like this or something warped him along the way to adulthood. Chris said he was proud and excited to spend 6 months' salary on Shannon's engagement ring. She loved it, and they were just happy, happy, happy. I think they truly were at one time. I see that unmistakable goofiness on their faces in older pictures. He claims their wedding day was the happiest day of his life, and of course he was blown away by her exquisite beauty on that day. And I agree, Shannon was a stunning bride. She was stunning, period. And then this quote left me speechless. Quote, when I think back on what was said, I still cannot believe I lost my whole family, a family that I wanted my whole life. It's the most horrible thing I could ever do. And I'm still saying it was not my mind or my hands that did this to them, but the hands and mind of being controlled by something evil. I hope people will believe me. He's serious, isn't he? First, that he lost them, and then that it's not his fault. He was being dominated by a diabolical existence or being. Is that what numbnuts is trying but failing miserably to explain? And this was a bit shocking to me. He admits he's a candy-ass coward chicken shit. Not in so many words, but he does admit to failing to have the courage to stand up to his wife. He actually said, quote, that he failed to rise to the occasion, end quote. This is what he said, quote, I needed to rise to the occasion and be a man, to help my wife see that she could not control everything and everyone around her, and if she couldn't come to terms with that, then split. I was not able to confront the situation, though. I could not go to Shannon and tell her my feelings, end quote. Bingo, dumbass. This is what you should have been working on, instead of running around acting like a horny teenager. You had a baby on the way and you were about to lose your house. Shannon was desperate for you to tell her what was going on in that peanut head of yours. You could have listed the house for sale, even started packing to move. Enrolled the children in a more affordable part-time school. You should have pulled up your Thomas the Train underwear and started practicing being the man of the house. I think Shannon would have been all wooed by that, by you being all manly and stuff. Just like how Scarlett O'Hara was all turned on when Brett Butler would stand up to her. She probably needed a break from wearing the pants, but you should have told her why you were losing interest in the marriage. Running away is not an option, especially when you have kids. This is what you've been training for your whole life, being an adult. And the fucking solution you came to is fucking insane. And now you are in timeout the rest of your life, and taxpayers have to pay for your sorry ass. I think you should beg to be put in general population, get a 12-cent an hour job within the prison, and pay back as much restitution as you can for the hours upon hours others have had to spend cleaning up the ghastly and revolting mess you made because you are a knucklehead, dumbass, chicken shit piece of shit. And these words, rising to the occasion, don't sound like they would come out of the same lion mouth that was on the front porch telling lies to the media and using the word like repeatedly. But Chris in this chapter expresses regrets, it seems, in not being what I would call an equal partner. No one told you to cower in the corner and act like a sissy. He says he was afraid to talk to Shannon. Well then, it makes sense that someone had to take charge of your household, you bonehead. If you're going to act like a child, you naturally will get treated like one. Again, this is what Lunkhead says, quote, I needed to rise to the occasion and be a man, to help my wife see she could not control everything and everyone around her, and if she couldn't come to terms with that, then split, end quote. I almost laughed thinking of him trying to say that out loud. It's very sad, actually, Chris's lack of social and communication skills, claiming he wants to be himself, but he didn't have a clue how to. Then it came to light that he's a covert narcissist, chicken shit family annihilator. But he won't accept that. He was controlled, he said, by evil, by darkness, by Shannon. He seems to draw the line at and refuses to accept responsibility for himself and his actions. This really surprised me that I read in the chapter, quote, my dad misses Shannon and the girls so much, both of us do, end quote. Chris says he didn't want the big house with the hefty mortgage payment, but he says he couldn't tell Shannon no, and he wanted her to be happy. He talks briefly about the friend of Shannon's, the woman that Shannon was briefly a nanny for. They lived in her basement for over a year when they moved to Colorado. Chris said at some point Shannon and this woman had a falling out, and he never saw or heard from her or her husband again. He doesn't know why or what it was about. Well, why the hell didn't you ask, dumbass? Normally married people talk to one another. Chris talks about being housebroke, about Shannon overspending and how they never had any money. How do people with no money jet around the country on back-to-back trips? I know Thrive paid for some of the expenses, but I don't think they paid for all of them. I've looked up the Lavelle site before. It depends totally on your own sales and recruits during a certain time period, and the same for your downline. So he talks about no money, no decision-making power, and that Shannon would throw extravagant parties. And then I picture Chris doing a parlor trick during one of these parties, sitting on the pristine carpet in the formal living room, scooting his bare ass across the carpet, acting out from his anxiety of anticipating an adult conversation. He wasn't allowed to work out, he says, and that Shannon asked him to stage photos like she was going out jogging with him. He admits to lying to Nikki and to other people, saying that he and Shannon had discussed separating. He said she was totally blindsided by him wanting to, as he calls it, separate. He acknowledges that he only started sleeping in the basement after returning as a family from North Carolina. He discloses that he was being a mean prick to her so he wouldn't have to talk to her about all the things he was chicken shit about. Perhaps he should have had his mother write her a note. He claims that he was able to be himself around Nikki, and he couldn't do that with his own wife. I call bullshit on that. They barely knew each other. Chris himself has said he was happy with life before he started the affair. Yes, I'm sure the money situation was stressful, but again, why were people flying on trips all over the place? That's really expensive, and the kids going to a crazy expensive school. I mean, I just can't wrap my head around this malarkey. They should have handed their paychecks and bills to me. I would have had this shit straightened out in a few months. This is what happens when one spouse has their head in the sand and the other has their head in the clouds about the family finances. He said he wanted to separate because Shannon was so bossy. Don't tell me she didn't show any of that bossy side before you got married. And I'm sure the meeker you got, the bossier she got. But someone has to assume the role of authoritarian and take charge. It's the yin and yang and the to and fro bullshit. Did you even know Shannon was bossy before Nikki told you? And did Nikki also tell you that you were unhappy? You claim you don't like bossiness, but I see that thing rearing its ugly head in this doomed-to-fail new relationship too with Nikki. She was playing you, dude, like a fiddle. I assume y'all were into role-playing. Well, she was letting you be the big strong man right up until she was walking down the aisle. Then she was going to snap your ass right back into place. I guarantee it. Chris says Shanann was keeping him from his family, and he was caught in the middle and yada yada yada. But she was actually trying to reach out to them and repair it. She was talking to her friends about it because you wouldn't talk to her about it, and because she knew she had gone too far this time with your family. She had already sent your parents a sonogram text that they ignored. I'm the type of person, well, I feel like this shit needs to be solved on the spot. It involved all of you speaking to one another. I would have taken Shanann to your parents' house and talked it out. It could have been done on a 2 or 3-way phone call too, depending on how many people were actually involved. You could even use a mediator. Start with an email. Damn, there were so many ways to get this ball rolling. I'm pretty sure you could have gotten Shanann to cooperate because she was desperate to be close to you again. Either way, it was going to be fixed again eventually. You all did this time and time again. I've seen some very nice photos of Shanann and your parents getting along nicely after the wedding fiasco. I know this because Bella and Cece are in the pictures. So it could have been fixed. Heavens to Betsy, you weren't showing any initiative. You know, it's Shanann this and Shanann that. She would be bossy and my sister and her would fight and her and my mom and wah wah wah. Like a baby you go on. Chris whines about Shanann and his family not getting along. Quote, I felt thrown in the middle all the time, and I just wanted all of us to get along, end quote. Well, Chris, I know a lot of people that would like to throw you down the middle of an interstate at 3 a.m. when people are driving home from the bar drunk. The common denominator is you, Christopher. You needed to stop being a pansy ass. Look where it's gotten you. You were always going to be caught in that cycle unless you got strong, not just a body, where you overpowered your pregnant wife and 2 very little girls. Can you not see that Nikki was going to fall into that similar kind of pattern eventually? Quote, I had been thinking about killing my family. I didn't want to, but I knew I was going to do it. I did not realize I would feel anger because I didn't know what that felt like. I just knew there was something in me that felt like it was controlling me. There was a feeling of something dark around me, end quote. Damn, Cadle, did you always just let him ramble on about this, or did you ask questions? For example, was he alarmed with his thoughts? Did it occur to him to seek professional help on the double? Chris Watts claims he doesn't blame Shanann, but yes, he kind of is. Or he has a lot of anger towards her. I just hate it when people say their wedding vows without listening to them and absorbing them. It's almost like until I get sick of the sight of your face and someone who I deem better comes along. Then he says he doesn't blame Nikki either and that she's a victim. But coincidentally, when he started hooking up with her is when he started thinking about killing his family. My God, man, did alarm bells not go off in your head? You couldn't have texted your dad? I know y'all don't like to talk out loud. You could have said something along the lines of, Dad, I've started an affair and I think I'm in love and I've begun to have some unsavory thoughts about harming Shanann and the kids. Please help me and don't tell Mom. I'm very confident he would have talked some sort of sense into you and would have advised you the proper way of getting rid of your family with them still being alive and free to go on and enjoy life without you. Things would have simmered down eventually. Chris claims he felt the presence of a demon, but not in the religious sense, and he was having visions of sorts. Is there not someone you can call for a problem like that? Hey, I know a priest. You could have had an exorcism. I want to know, did it scare you? I wish I knew the questions that Cadle Scribe asked him, if any. Jesus Christ, man, if it stresses you out to that degree about Shanann telling you to tell your parents they can't see or talk to the kids anymore, you could have folded your arms across your chest and said no. Make me. There's a thing called being defiant. You could have tried some of that. You could also assume the defiant stance. Put your hands on your hips and refuse to cooperate further. You could have practiced in front of the mirror while you had the house to yourself. Hanging that picture on the wall would have made you feel all powerful and stuff. So, while I was making my notes on this chapter, I kept having a nagging feeling that I just could not identify. A lot of this chapter sounded so familiar to me. Why is that? Did I hear it in one of Scribble's interviews? Did she already speak of it in the book? Damn it, I hate when I do this because I just cannot go on. I have a disability called CRS, can't remember shit, and I couldn't remember where I had seen and heard all of this before. I just could not let this go why the shit sounded so familiar. So now that I'm practically a gumshoe, I wasn't going to stop until I found out just why it sounded so familiar. Remember when Dieter was showing Nikki around the house, making sure she saw the pictures of the lovely family, and she got all jealous and shit and stormed out to her truck, sat there texting Chris like a teenager? That was probably it. So I kept on looking. I read that chapter again, and it was that chapter where Dieter was laughing at NK after he orchestrated her meltdown. And then, no, I finally found it. It was Detective Baumhover's report. Of course. Silly me, I thought Cadle put this chapter together herself. It was from when Baumhover talked with NK on September 4th, 2018. Discovery page 1059. Why did I believe her when she had some informal conversations with Chris? Some of it, a very minute part of it perhaps, but a large portion of this stuff he told Nikki, and Nikki shared it with Detective Baumhover, containing notes of events she recalled since her last meeting with another agent. Baumhover says that the events documented reportedly occurred between June 25, 2018 through August 13, 2018. I now get why it took me so long to find it. Apparently this was scanned in, possibly as a JPEG file, into the Discovery, and it wasn't showing as searchable text because it was a photo of sorts. Whenever will I stop doubting what I know in my heart to be true? Boom, just like that, I found nearly the entire chapter. This time, NK wrote it. Please, woman, cite your sources, Mrs. Scribble. So this is where Crybaby blabbed all of his and Shannon's business to NK. It's similar to when, as a child or a teenager, and you're at your friend's parents' house and you tell your friend's parents that you wish they were your parents because you were horribly mistreated at home. Grow a pair, Chris. I'll tell you why I didn't give up searching for this. It's because it was too well written. That made me crazy suspicious. And I now know it's because Nikki wrote it. And I've seen from her work emails that she knew how to come across as professional when the occasion called for it. I'll be glad when I'm done with this book, really. And here I thought we were getting some stuff hot off the press. I don't think I like the integrity or the like thereof of this woman that wrote this book, or claims to have written this book. One could still say it was hot off the press and that NK presented Detective Baumhover with a 7-page typed document that she generated. It appears, and I use that term loosely, but it appears Cadle the scribe may have peppered it up with some conversations with Chris Watts. Someone asked me why I refer to Miss Kessinger as Nikki. Simply, it's because that's how it is in the book, which I assume is how Chris Watts referred to her with Mrs. Scribble. I'm going to read Detective Baumhover's notes at the end of this video. It's pretty eye-opening stuff. A lot of it sounds just like it would be too hard to make up. The part I'm talking about is the inconsistencies NK was getting from Fart Face. He can't keep a lie straight to save his life, and I can see why Mrs. Cadle formed a farce. A kinship with Chris. I'm still mad at myself for believing Mrs. Scribble finally wrote a chapter for herself. I tend to believe the good in people until proven otherwise. I'm just let down by this whole thing. I thought she wrote a fucking book. No, she wrote a letter to Chris Watts. I am now questioning if she even spoke to him on the phone or in person. If she had, I feel like there would have been more in this book than copy-paste. We do still have a couple of chapters to go, so let's see. It takes me a while to lose faith in someone, and now the deed is done. I don't trust her. I don't believe her. Some of you may have seen a video on J for Justice's channel regarding some alleged text between Mrs. Scribble and Chris Watts' sister. I'll link that video in the description. Mrs. Scribble says those texts were altered. And who knows, someone is lying. I just don't know who it is. Just make your own informed decision. Chris then tells about a creepy letter from a creepy woman he got, where this woman claims to have been dreaming of Bella. It's very insulting to Bella's memory, and she told Chris Watts he doesn't need to worry anymore because she is in heaven and happy. Yes, I know that. This after saying Bella was dripping with gasoline in the dream. Really? What in God's green earth is wrong with people? You know what, lady? Fuck off. Bella is very dear to my heart. All of Chris Watts' victims are dear to my heart. So please don't. Just don't. Why was this shit even put in the book? I'm going to link my favorite video of Bella at the end. It just melts my heart. She had achieved breaking the habit of sucking her thumb. She was so proud of herself. She was being rewarded with some hair clips that she asked for. I cry every time. Here is a quote from Chris Watts showing that he is still delusional and probably always will be. Quote, "My life, for all intents and purposes, was over, and then I received a letter that lit a fire in me. I was told God could still use me and that I could help others. Maybe I could reach those who are planning on doing something as horrendous as I did and offer them a way of hope. I could help save lives that way and serve for the rest of my life." End quote. If Chris Watts really could help others, that would be amazing. One can always hope. So, Discovery pages 1058, 1065 comprise not only this chapter but also Dieter's chapter from earlier in the book. It pisses me off that she quotes it as if it came from conversations or letters between herself and Chris Watts. It didn't. It came from our trusty Discovery document. There are still well over 1,000 pages she hasn't used yet, enough for another 3 or 4 more books, mind you. The chapter ends with this, quote, "I hear my baby's voice every day as she tried to stop me from killing her," end quote. Chris, I hope that haunts and torments you until you take your last breath. And that will be the end of this video. I will pick up with chapter 24 in the next one. Thank you for listening. I'm going to read starting with Discovery page 1058 from Detective Baumhover. He handwrote on this notes received from N. Kessinger on 9/4/18, and then he initialed it DB. And before I go on, I just wanted to say, when I was reading this discovery, it had initials CW for, of course, Chris Watts and SW for Shannon Watts. And I said their names instead of the initials, and for whatever reason, I was calling Shannon, so please forgive me of that. Thank you. On 9/4/18 at approximately 1300 hours, I met with Nicole Kessinger at the CBI headquarters, located at 690 Kipling Street, Lakewood, Colorado. I was introduced by CBI Special Agent Kobach, who had interviewed her several times previous to my introduction. I advised Nicole that I am now her point of contact regarding this case and that Special Agent Kobach would attend other cases he was assigned to at the CBI. Nicole acknowledged this information and presented me with a 7-page typed document she generated containing notes of events she had recalled since her last meeting with Special Agent Kobach. The events documented reportedly occurred between 6/25/18 through 8/13/18. I advised Nicole I would review the notes she provided me, along with the reports and recordings from all the previous interviews, and contact her with any follow-up questions I may have. Nicole acknowledged my statement, and our meeting ended shortly thereafter. Special Agent Kobach agreed to complete a follow-up interview with Nicole's friend and provide me the reports. While at the CBI headquarters, I took custody of Nicole's cell phone, an iPhone 6, which she had previously surrendered to Special Agent Kobach. I placed the cell phone into evidence and entered the CBI chain of custody form into the case file. Nothing further. This is now Discovery page 1059. Approximately 6:25 or 6:26, 2018, in person. These are Nicole Kessinger's notes that she gave to Detective Baumhover. Asked Chris Watts when he and Shannon Watts had decided to separate. He told me late March, early April 2018. I asked him if he still lived with her, and he told me yes. Said that when she was home, he slept in a different room, and when she was gone, he would occasionally sleep in the master bedroom, but not frequently because the bed was uncomfortable. I asked why he had decided to separate from Shannon Watts. Chris Watts told me she was bossy. I asked him what he meant by bossy. Chris Watts responded that she was controlling. Said they really don't argue much, though. Said that once many years ago he attempted to stand his ground with her, and she told him, "Get out of my house," and made him leave for a night. Chris Watts said he tried to avoid arguments ever since then. Said that now if him and Shannon Watts disagreed, she would make nasty comments to him and he would just ignore them. I asked if she talked like that in front of the kids. He said yes, my kids started to repeat her words, and that is why I wanted the separation. Asked him what he said to his kids when they repeated Shannon Watts' words. Chris Watts said he would tell his children that it was not nice to say that to anybody. I asked Chris Watts if Shannon Watts was bossy in front of his friends. Chris Watts said that Shannon Watts was all about appearances, all aspects of her life, and that in front of her friends she was occasionally bossy, but she would turn it into kind of a joke so that it was more discreet. I asked him how long the communication breakdown between them had been going on. Chris Watts said 6 years, and that the last year or two was the worst. I asked him if he had tried to communicate to her how it made him feel when she said mean comments to him. He said he tried to talk to her many times, but it fell on deaf ears. I asked Chris Watts if they had attempted to go to counseling to fix their problems. Chris Watts said no. Chris Watts then said that some nights he would still currently hang out next to the bed in the master bedroom with her and would try to talk with her or spend time with her until she fell asleep. Chris Watts tells me that the other reason he was separated is because Shannon Watts hated that he liked to work out and eat healthy. Said that before they decided to separate, Shannon Watts would get mad at him if he tried to go for a run at night once the kids were in bed. Said that Shannon Watts felt it took time away from the time they should be spending together. Chris Watts said that it was frustrating because when he would try to hang out with her, she didn't pay attention to him and would talk on the phone and scroll through social media instead. Chris Watts said that many times he would try to talk to Shannon Watts and she would not acknowledge him and instead would reply with, "Were you talking to me? 'Cause I wasn't listening to you." Chris Watts told me that Shannon Watts had asked him numerous times to take pictures of them pretending to run together so she could post it on social media, but she wouldn't actually go for a run with him. Discovery page 1060 said he started waking up early to lift weights because it was something he did every day and he didn't want his routine to interfere with his time with his kiddos. Said his health was important to him and he wished that he could have been supportive and not upset. Approximately 6/27/2018 in person. Chris Watts brings condoms to my house. One box is full and unopened. The second is a set of condoms from a partially used box. I asked Chris Watts why he has a set of partially used condoms. Chris Watts informs me that the condoms he has are from back when he was still having sex with his wife. Told me they had been sitting in a closet collecting dust and that Shannon Watts probably did not even know they were still there. Asked why him and Shannon Watts used to use condoms. Chris Watts informed me that Shannon Watts did not like to get messy. I was curious, so I looked up the expiration date on the condoms and noted that the unopened set expired in late 2022 and the unopened set expired in early 2023. I looked up the lifespan of an unopened condom and discovered it is approximately 5 years. Based on my research, I assumed these condoms were manufactured in late 2017 and early 2018. On or shortly after July 4th, 2018. In person. I complimented his home as being very beautiful. Chris Watts said he had always wanted a smaller ranch-style home. Chris Watts said that Shannon Watts insisted on the big house because she liked to throw parties and make it look like they had everything. I asked him what type of parties he was referring to. Chris Watts shook his head left to right and said, "Just expensive parties." Chris Watts then tells me that they had the house built, and the only part of the design that he had any say in was the stonework and the paint color on the exterior of the house. Chris Watts said his mortgage was $2,800 a month, and he was tired of being housebroke. I asked why it was so expensive. Chris Watts said that about $500 of the $2,800 was homeowners insurance. 7/14/2018 in person. Discovery page 1061. Went to his house to drop him off after we visited the Shelby Mustang Museum, Boulder. While at his house, I felt uncomfortable, as if I did not belong there. He had built a beautiful life, and it made me think there was still a chance for him to fix things with his wife. I told him I did not think it was fair to Shannon Watts or to me that he was trying to live two lives by being in a relationship with both of us at the same time. Said that I think he either needed to fix things with her and let me go, or he needed to move towards trying to finalize his divorce. I told him I thought his problems with Shannon Watts were fixable, and that he should focus on trying to rekindle the relationship that they had before giving up. He said that Shannon Watts was set on separating, and so was he. He said that when Shannon Watts wants something, she gets her way. I told him I did not understand why they hadn't completed the divorce after all these months, if they were both so adamant about it. If she wanted it as bad as he stated, I did not understand why it seemed stagnant. At this moment, I realized he might be lying to me about his separation, so I started quizzing him on things he had told me earlier. Asked him when was the last time he was intimate with his wife. Chris Watts told me that day that the last time he and Shannon Watts had sex was in May, but he told me on an earlier date that the two had not been intimate since March or early April. I asked Chris Watts if he used protection when he slept with her, because he stated on an earlier date that he used condoms when they had sex. He told me that he had not used protection. I asked him if he was lying about his separation. Chris Watts said no. I asked him if he was actively trying to have a child with Shannon Watts since they had unprotected sex. He said no. I left his house. Approximately July 15th through July 19th, 2018, continued from the above conversation, text and in person. He tells me that he still wants a separation, but this time he states it is because he never met anyone like me. Told him that he better not be doing this for me and that he needs to be leaving his current situation because it is what he and her both felt is best for their kids and for themselves. We spoke over the next several days and spent a little time together, but I did not want to be intimate with him. I kept telling him that I thought he really needed to fix things with her and not to worry about building a relationship with me anymore. Told him that I had been asked out on 2 dates since I had known him and that I didn't go on either one, that I was stood up. Told him that he took the respect and trust from our relationship because I felt like he was lying. Discovery page 1062, in person. We attempted to have sex 4 times that evening, and he seems mentally interested but physically cannot perform. I asked him what the problem was several times, and he kept telling me that nothing was wrong. I told him he was quiet that day, and it seemed like he had something on his mind. I asked him what was bothering him had to do with the convo that occurred the previous weekend. Chris Watts said yes, told me that he initially was mad that I had been asked out on dates, but then felt like he couldn't be mad because that would make him a hypocrite. Said what was really bothering him was that I kept asking him to try and fix things with Shannon Watts. Chris Watts told me that he would attempt to fix things with her when he was in North Carolina and that he didn't want to talk about it anymore while he was home. The sex from then on for the rest of the relationship was greatly reduced from 3 to 4 times daily to once or maybe 2 times, and it was not as intimate when it occurred. Sex no longer happened every day we hung out, but it was still very frequent. Conversation while Chris Watts was in North Carolina. Phone. Chris Watts tells me he had a conversation with his buddy Mark, who lives in San Diego. Says Mark informed him that many years ago he believes Shannon Watts was responsible for a large amount of money that was embezzled from a company that Shannon Watts and Mark both worked for at the time, but that the company was never able to prove who did it. Wednesday, August 8th, 2018, in person. Chris Chris Watts stops by the Frederick, Colorado Toyota dealership to pick up an order of touch-up paint and windshield wipers for my vehicle after he gets off work. I pre-ordered the paint several weeks earlier. He brings them to my house sometime between 3 and 4:30 p.m. that day. Saturday, August 11th, 2018, in person. Chris Watts told me he didn't have any extra money for a deposit on an apartment. I told him that apartments nowadays were so expensive for rent that the damage deposits have to be fairly cheap because otherwise people can't afford the move-in costs. He said that every time he got paid, he just watched his bank account dwindle down. He said he wished he had a way to prevent his disposable income from being spent. Discovery page 1063. I told him that it's possible to divide paychecks into multiple bank accounts, but that if he considered doing that, he would need to make sure he was responsible and that his mortgage and kids and his standard monthly bills were covered first. I told him that if Shannon Watts ever wanted child support, he would still be required by law to show proof of that income, even if it was in a second account. I suggested that if he decided to do that, perhaps just contribute a small amount that wouldn't impact his current living situation, but would give him a cushion for the first month's bills when he transitioned to an apartment, but that was his discretion. Monday, August 13th, 2018, continued from above conversation. Text or phone. Suggested the bank account idea again after he told me that he thought Shannon Watts was gone for the night at a friend's house. Asked him if any money was missing from their bank account. Chris Watts said no. Tuesday, August 14th, 2018. Continued from above conversation. Text. Chris Watts told me he opened up a second bank account so he could start saving for an apartment. Monday, August 13th, 2018. Text. Chris Watts informs me his family is gone and asked me to call him when I have a chance. When I called Chris Watts, he informed me that the cops were at his house and that he would need to call me back. I was unaware that his wife had missed a doctor's appointment, or that his kids had missed school that day, or that her friend had tried to contact her and couldn't, or that he had tried to call her and didn't get a response, or that her friend had stopped by the house hours earlier to check on her. I asked him why the cops were there. Chris Watts says that the media are arriving. I was confused and asked him why they were there. Chris Watts tells me that Nicole called the media. I asked Chris Watts why he believed Nicole would call the cops and the media. He said Nicole wasn't being very nice to him, informed me that she was sitting in her car on the phone with Shannon Watts' mom. Asked how Nicole knew Shannon Watts' mom. Chris Watts informed me Nicole used to work with Shannon Watts' mom. I asked if he thought maybe Nicole was the friend that was helping Shannon Watts to get away for a day. Chris Watts says no, why would Nicole be helping Shannon Watts if she is the one who called the cops? I suggested maybe it was to throw him off the trail. He did not agree. Chris Watts asked me if he should talk to the media. I initially told him no, and then suggested if he decided to speak to them that maybe he could ask Shannon Watts to bring his kids back. Was uncomfortable with him asking for my advice on the media, so I then asked him what his friends thought he should do about the media. Chris Watts says that his friends believe that it would look bad if he didn't speak to the news and thought he should make a statement. Phone. I asked Chris Watts if the cops had attempted to search his friends' houses since he believed that Shannon Watts had gone to stay with a friend. He told me no, they hadn't. I asked him why not, and he told me he didn't know why they hadn't. I asked him why Nicole did not like him. He said he wasn't sure. I asked Chris Watts if Nicole was married and how well he knew Nicole and her husband. He informed me that he didn't know her husband hardly at all. I again suggested that maybe Nicole was the one who may be helping Shannon Watts to hide out from him for a while. Chris Watts said maybe, but he really didn't seem like he was entertaining the idea. Asked him if he thought she was with another man. Chris Watts said it was possible, but he did not think so. I asked if he thought his family was in danger. Chris Watts said, quote, "If my kids are with her, then they are safe," unquote. Never said he was worried or concerned about his family unless I prompted the question. Looking back on everything, I'm so glad that Nicole showed up that day to check on her friend. Monday, August 13th, 2018. Phone. Chris Watts says his home camera shows him leaving for work at 5:15 like usual that morning. Chris Watts tells me his home alarm system notified him at 9:10 his garage door opened, but that he never received a notification on his phone that it closed again. I asked him if his garage was open when he got home from work that day, and he told me no. I asked Chris Watts if he thought that Shannon Watts left out the garage at 9:10 that morning. He suggested that she either left out the garage door or the back door because there is no footage of her leaving from his front door camera. I asked Chris Watts if there was any sign of forced entry, and he told me no. Discovery page 1065. Told me he didn't want to keep talking about that subject and asked me to talk about something else. And that's the end of that report. Thank you for listening.
I'm also down.
You okay? So tell everybody what you're getting. Say hi, everybody.
I'm getting my hair clipped.
For why are you getting hair clips?
Because I'm not sucking my thumb.
You're not sucking your thumb. You're a big girl now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And so, how long has it been that you haven't been sucking your thumb?
2
weeks? Has it, sit down. Has it been 2 weeks? Yes?
No.
2 weeks of no sucking thumb, right? Good job. So what are you getting for being such a big girl?
A hair clip.
Hair clips. Is that what you wanted?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's show everybody your hair clips. Show them. She's got one, and we got more. Show them those. Are you excited? And these. And those. That's a lot of hair clips. Are you such a big girl?
Mm-hmm.
Which ones do you want to wear first?
I don't know. I just want to hold them.
You just want to hold them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell everybody that you're such a big girl.
I just the girl.
And how old are you going to be next week?
4.
You're going to be 4. Where's your birthday party?
In July.
No, that's Cece's. Where's your birthday party? Where are you having the party at?
Aquarium.
At the aquarium. And who's coming to your birthday party?
Cheryln, Josie, and Amelia, and Max, and not Finn, not Butcher's cousin, not Timothy.
They're not coming?
Josh, Tim, and not Tim, Josh.
Is Amelia coming? Yeah? And who else? Is the Little Mermaid coming? She is. You're having a mermaid birthday party. Everyone says, great job, Bella. Say thank you.
Thank you.
Look at the camera and say thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so 2 weeks, no sucking thumb, all cold turkey, and it worked. If anyone wants my secret, let me find my secret. Where's my secret, Chris? Where's my secret?
Daddy, what?
A baby?
What?
Baby? We're having baby fever over here. Kids are having baby fever.
3.
3. She's
4.
so happy. She wants hair clips so bad. We had some, but then they got lost at school, and you know how that goes. Her and her girlfriends play like trading cards. Can I put one in your hair?
No, I want to just hold them.
You just want to hold them?
Yeah.
How many clips are there? Can you count each one individually? No, count each one. How many are on there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Keep going. Keep going. What comes after 6?
20.
No, 7.
7, 8, 7,
9.
6. No.
Silly goose. 7, 8.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
15.
16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27.
And what else comes after 27? 28.
28, 29, 28,
30.
30,
31.
32,
30.
33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. I've never heard you count to 38 before. That's incredible, kiddo. So anyone having a thumb-sucking baby, we washed her, we painted her nails like we normally do, and then we put our secret little clear nail polish over. Can you guys see that? I can show you. I got it on Amazon like 10 bucks.
Do you have CC's?
Can you guys see that? I don't know if it's kind of blurry. But anyway, I'll type it in the thing. And I only put it on once. At the end of week 5, I put it just on her thumb. And we haven't done it since. And she hasn't sucked her thumb. She's asked if she could. And we told her no, because she's being such a big girl. And she gets the hair clips. So we're excited. And Cece's on week 2 of potty training. How many, do you have any accidents today? No accidents today at school. No accidents this weekend. She's had 2 accidents in 2 weeks, which is incredible. So a lot of excitement in this household. So I made them cupcakes today. We made cupcakes. They don't like icing, so there's plain cupcakes and hair clips. So a lot of, yes, baby. She can, but after mommy. Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Say thank you for being
Thank you.
the compliments.
Thank you to compliment.
All right, guys. Have a great day, and we're going to go celebrate our excitement over here. Talk to you guys later. Bye.